We're here in the Calabasas Library with Authors Night. I'm your host, I'm Karen Foley, and our guest is Peter Arthur with his book, The Fight for Immortality.
Well, thank you.
Now, before I describe the book,
Yes.
it's science fiction, but from someone who grew up reading science fiction, as I think both of us did,
Right.
science fiction turned out to be futuristic because reading Ray Bradbury, all that he wrote about as a dream, as a possibility, a lot of it became a reality.
It's true.
So how would you describe your book, The Fight for Immortality?
Well, the way I describe it is it's an actual effort for to project a potential future. You know, a lot of the early sci-fi writers went down that path. A lot of sci-fi writers they just write a story and so forth. But mine, The Fight for Immortality, is to present, say, a human potential that could possibly one day exist, and it's a lot of fun, actually.
Did you grow up and are you still reading science fiction books?
I do. Orson Scott Card is one of my favorite sci-fi authors. He obviously wrote Ender's Game, which is a very very big sci-fi book, and then that became a movie. And he was rather influential in some of the things that I wrote later on. But yeah, reading Orson. I'm actually going to be doing a workshop with him in the next couple of weeks too. So it's an ongoing process. He's a master, and I'm hopefully getting there.
A disciple of his.
Something like that, sure.
But this book is such a big, intense, filled book with a lot of action and a lot of good writing. How long did it take you to write this book?
Well, the beginning was 1988. Actually, it's many years ago now. I had a very intense dream. I had just returned to Salt Lake City, and it was the middle of winter, and one night I had an incredible dream about how an interstellar culture was immortal. And it was so impactful. For days, I talked to people about the different details of how this particular interstellar culture organized immortality within itself. And it was very specific and very particular. And so it was funny because later on, when I talked to those same folks about it, they never remembered my conversation at all. It was very important to me. And I said to my mother, especially at that time, that one day I would write a book that included that. And so that concept of immortality is specifically what's in the book. But then, of course, the story itself I manufactured to make the concept itself make sense, and so to give it continuity. And it's a real challenge. When I wrote it, I had so much energy for the concept itself and how the story evolved, and I just really inserted that in there. And so when you read the book, it's really difficult to not experience what the characters themselves go through. I mean, if you read it, it places you as the reader in a position where you have to evaluate you have to evaluate yourself and your own life and your own either belief or lack of belief in immortality, or whatever your concept of that idea is. It causes you to form either a stronger opinion of your own, or to disagree with what I have written, or to take something new into and embrace it. And so it's you don't get out alive after reading this, man. You really go through it. Yeah.
What is your background that led you to all this? Where did you grow up, as an example?
I grew up in Australia, a little country town.
'Cause I can hear an inflection in your
Little bit there, still left. But I came to the United States in 1976, so I've acculturated at this point in time completely. But the little country town was Morwell, and a wonderful little place to grow up, and very, we used to have the run of the town, and as the kids, we'd, always be out and about doing whatever it is we were doing. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up. And in 1976, we came to the U.S. But the beginnings of my science fiction journey, my brother, who was 3 years older than me, he would hand down comic books to me, right? So he'd get comics, and I'd get them secondhand, right? So, and that was fine with me. I didn't have any trouble with that. And then my father, who also loved science fiction, he would give them to my brother, and then my brother would give them to me. So I got the tumbling down. Michael Moorcock was a big fantasy writer at the time that I clearly remember. In fact, I reread one of his books not too long ago. The Knight of Swords was Michael's book, and so I had a really, really strong grounding in an enormous number of sci-fi authors, with thanks to my father and brother.
Did you ever save those comic books?
I never have.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it's true. It's my life has been a life of travel, and so I tend to divest myself of stuff. So I don't accumulate a lot of books, and I didn't have it. I don't have those at all.
So you travel light.
Exactly. You know what I mean? If you're on the road continually, it's a challenge to take the things, even the things that you love, and keep them with you. So it's been I haven't made great efforts along that. Although there's some books I still keep.
The people, possessions, you just go onward.
True.
What can I ask? What takes you on the road all the time?
Well, I do events with my book, obviously, but also I do sales. I have done various different product sales for many, many years, and it's not even just so much that. I've also been a driven traveler. In fact, any time in my life that I'd spent more than 6 months in one place, I would get pretty antsy. I needed to leave. So it's sort of like and so what I would do is I would embrace work that caused me to travel. And so being a sales guy, it's easy to travel.
There's a
many,
song
many
like
times.
that. I'm a traveling man.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a traveling guy. I like to settle down a little more these days, but still, I was in Reno yesterday, and I'll be in Washington State tomorrow. So still traveling.
There's not one place you call home?
I love Los Angeles. I love the LA area. I lived in Salt Lake City many years, and that's a beautiful place to live also. And but I'm more familiar with the LA area, and it's more what I call home than anywhere else, I would say. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we caught you when you were here.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. It's funny.
What time period would you call this?
I actually specifically removed virtually every reference to time, and the reason I did it was to actually have, whenever someone read it, whether it was today or 5 years from today, that they could easily envision it being in the present. So basically, even cell phones, I call them our personal communication device. Oh. So any of the things that are going to be, 30 years from now, no one's going to call a cell phone a cell phone. Who knows what it's going to be, but it'll be something different, right? Because those kind of things evolve. But a personal communication device is simply something that you use to communicate with other people. So it'll have longevity as a term. And so whenever anyone picks up my book, I just wanted them to get the idea that it was in the present. and so I was careful. There's only one subtle time reference in the entire book. It was very fun. It was just the day I was writing it was virtually 100 years after the sinking of the Titanic, and so I just put in a tiny little reference that some alien was messing with an iceberg at this particular time, and so it was kind of subtle. It wasn't, but that's really the only time reference in the entire book.
Is there a particular group, a particular age, gender that's directed, that you targeted for that book?
Interesting. I actually really wanted to make sure that it appealed to a very, very large audience. Obviously, the subject of immortality itself is contentious. If you actually delve into it and express strong opinions or have a story that has intimately involved in that topic, it's going to create waves. You know what I mean? Some people will like it, some people won't. But I wrote it in such a fashion. The youngest person I know who's read it was 13. Young man. He was the grandson of the gentleman who did the typesetting on my book, and he wanted to see how his grandson felt about it, and he really loved it. And the oldest gentleman who's read it is now he's 92, and it was fascinating. I swear, this guy, George, he picked out two things that nobody ever spotted that were, something that I could have worked on again. You always, an author, you look at your book and you go, oh, I could rewrite this, I could rewrite that. And, you go through this over and over. Certainly I do. And he picked out the two things, and I knew that I had left these two things, right? And he's the only person who ever spotted, and this guy was he was probably 91 when he read it. But I was impressed. I was truly impressed. And there's a love story that goes through it as well. And so I've had many ladies express that they like that aspect of it too. When I read, I don't read love stories per se, but I enjoy that aspect of it in a book itself. And so I wanted to put something in there that I enjoy for others to read as well. And so, the genre is very specifically hard science fiction. It's not fantasy whatsoever. And but there's a lot of elements. I like intricacy, weaving in plot lines, but then making it clear. You know what I mean? That it's complex but understandable. And so that's the fun of it for me. As an author, apart from delivering a message that I might like to deliver, the the enjoyment of writing is to create something that nobody expects, but the plausibility is high. So when someone reads something, they go, it hits them like, oh my goodness, I never expected this to happen, but they could see exactly that it was a natural outcome and continuation of the story. And so that is fun. Now that is enjoyment.
Well, let's enjoy this in a few minutes after we take a short break and more questions for our author, Peter Arthur, and the book, The Fight for Immortality. Please stick with us for a very short intermission.
Where is this guy? So thirsty.
I hear he travels from the north.
Look!
That one's really dry.
LA is in a drought, yet over half of our drinking water is being used for landscaping. But it doesn't have to be that way. Just 1 inch of rain can yield thousands of gallons of water for use in landscaping and saves drinking water for drinking. Rain barrels, cisterns, and curb cuts are just a few ways to save water and energy. For more, visit LADWP and the Bay Foundation online.
We're back to Author's Night. We're back to our guest, Peter Arthur, and his book, The Fight for Immortality. You know, immortality is something I think if everyone had a wish list, they would put they would like to be immortal in one way or another. If it wasn't for the length of time lived, it would be a legacy to leave behind so that their memory, so that their name would be immortal. How do you feel about that and any relationship, to reference to the book that you wrote? Are you searching for your own immortality?
Well, in terms of what you leave behind, yeah, there's a certain amount of that that I feel. I was advised earlier on to split my book in two because it was going to be a better commercial venture. I went down that road partially, and then I put my book back together in one volume because I realized that the volume itself has a strong impact when you take it as a single unit, but separated it would have much less impact. So I was definitely thinking in those terms. You know, this will be left here when I'm gone, and later books in the series, and I want people to experience what I wrote and form their own opinion. You know what I mean? It's not that I'm looking for agreement particularly. It's simply you put something in front of somebody and you give them the opportunity to make up their own mind, which is what I think a lot of life can be. One of my characters is a very strong part of the book, and it actually one of the paragraphs that was liked most by readers was the opinion of actually being able to look at something, see what's there for yourself, make up your own mind, and brush aside the preconceptions of what would make you either agree or disagree with something, and so that you could actually see what's in front of you more clearly than have the preconditions of this has to be this way, this has to be that way. You know what I mean? But actually just be able to see what's there and make up your own mind. And so what other people think of you when you're gone, or how you're perceived, or the fact that, 10 years after there's no memory, right? And so any of these things are possible. But this takes immortality more on a personal level. For instance, to live forever, you would actually need certain skills. One of the skills would be able to, a person would have to be able to tolerate similar things happening again and again and not be upset by that. Because in our lives as we live them, a lot of things happen over and over. And say if you lived 200 years or 300 years or 500 years, then the number of times that you did the same thing over and over, if you couldn't take that, you would not, you would engineer a way to, or you just wouldn't be happy, right? And you can get pretty bent out of shape about the repetitiveness of something. So that, on a personal level, would be a skill that somebody had to have. Also, if you actually just weren't happy in life at all ever. I mean, I had a person comment just recently that immortality was something that I never wanted. And so they didn't like my book. And so, yeah, it forced them into, because, it forces a person into thinking of what it would be like if they were to live forever. And this particular person made the comment that immortality was something I never wanted, and so they didn't like my book at all.
Sad.
But it's true. That is sad from one perspective, but it's the multiplicity of life and how people feel about it is, I think it's much less well defined. People's emotions about living and the experiences they have are very, very varied, and they change dramatically. Sometimes one day you'll like it, the next day you won't, and so living forever has its has its challenges, you might say.
Well, when you were writing, it many times was like a stream of consciousness, writing, not only from your mind, but from your heart. Is that something that you do?
Absolutely. I rewrite quite significantly.
I mean, do you plan for all this, or does it just come as you're writing? The
It's
way
a-
you feel, the way you think, or is it plotted out?
It's
before
it's
you start?
both. It's both, and the way it comes out initially is I have to plan the major actions. If I'm not writing from one major activity to the next, and then what happens is I get writer's block, or whatever you
I was
call that.
going to go into that because it seemed to flow very easily and well. It didn't seem as if there were any interruptions.
Well, that's just a lot of hard work. I've got to tell you, that's just. Thank you very much for saying that. I mean, I appreciate that, but it's with my writing style. I plan the major events and the minutia that comes up. What a person does under a given circumstance is. I just write as I go. But if I don't have the major work plotted out, then I become unable to write. And so I only ran into that a couple of times, and then I identified it, right? I actually made myself be aware that if I don't make a plan from one step to the next, then I won't be able to continue. So.
If someone were to ask you, what is the theme, the focal point of the book, how could you describe a particular theme of the book?
Absolutely. One's ability to overcome anything. Life presents us with barriers, and my character is presented with so many barriers, and the people that he's associated with, through their love of the character, they don't want him to do various things, but he has. He knows what he needs to do, and he comes to know what he needs to do as he goes through, and he doesn't allow himself to get stopped. People really, really want to do something. They really want to make something of their lives, and it's just my character is that person.
What did you want to do with your life?
Myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you, one of my goals was to write that book, and obviously I have a lot more to come after it. But the idea that immortality is possible for somebody, or for everyone, is important to me, and it's important that. That I wrote a book so that you can either just enjoy it for the story alone. You can involve yourself in the philosophic aspect of immortality. You can, get twisted by all the stuff that happens in it in terms of your own emotional back and forward as the characters go forward to achieve their goals, and or I've had. I remember one young lady commenting that she said, whether or not you agree with this or disagree with it, it certainly opens your eyes as to another possibility. And so that, to me, when I read that comment, I felt to that degree fulfilled in having written my book, because it was I put it out there for people to either enjoy, accept, or reject, and she kind of encapsulated what I was looking for as a response, and so that was very heartwarming. And so, as I continue down this line, the this book is mainly set on Earth, and so the second book is away from Earth into the interstellar culture that I first dreamed of, and that takes the journey of the characters and where they go to, different heights and different challenges, and so it's fascinating, sort of like you live along with it to a slight degree. You know what I mean?
Now, you mentioned in the book there's this other, you brought into as the other aliens. How far developed along would you say they are in comparison to the people on Earth?
The concept of immortality and that culture, if you come from a culture where immortality is institutionalized in a way that is not part of a belief system, but is a fact. That was the dream. That this culture was not, that was based on immortality in a practical sense, not as a religious belief. And it wasn't not religious, but because of course immortality to some degree is always going to be religious. But in the culture that I dreamed of, immortality was a fact that everybody knew. And so there were some people who lived as immortals, and those who did not wanted to be, or those who didn't.
Why do you say that's religious when any immortality or any other people or creatures or entities from other worlds is a matter of science, not religion? Unless you're thinking, as people get older, they think there'll be a hereafter. Is that their immortality?
Not as I've conceived it in the book.
No, not as in the book, but
yeah, no,
theory.
it's a practical immortality where you you continue to live, not necessarily in the same body or in the same circumstances necessarily, but you continue to live in a definitive fashion that is undeniable to yourself and to everyone around you. And so for instance, in the book, if you didn't have the same body at a later date, you had it at an earlier date, but the culture still used bodies to identify ownership of various things, then you would need a way to legally transfer possession of like your house, your car, whatever else you had with you. And so that's just like, sort of like one of the fun things that you kind of think of, and it actually was very made a lot of sense to me when I thought about it. Right? If you would, one of the things a person does is they provide proof of that they're the same person, even if they have a different body. And so that's one of the things that just adds a little flavor to the story and makes the alien culture seem more real.
Well, I would like to go to the surreal as soon
Okay.
as we're finished with this segment and go one more.
Okay.
And stay with us for a short break. Author's Night, Peter Arthur and the Fight for Immortality.
Not it, not it. Again? Hey, Dad. Dad.
There are other ways of saving money and energy around your house. Did you know that LADWP is now offering cash rebates for you to retrofit your home to be more energy and water efficient? It's good for California, and it's good for Dad. Let's make California a better place to live, starting with our homes. To get your rebates, go to www.ladwp.com/save.
Not it. Not it.
It's Author's Night. Peter Arthur, our guest, here in the Calabasas Library. I'm Karen Foley, I'm your host, questioning you on going back to immortality unto
Yes.
itself.
Sure.
All of these other worlds, either in your book or on television or other science fiction books that I have read and been familiar with, these other cultures, from planets, from the wherever, always seem to be more advanced to teach us something, to give us something more than we have. Could it not be that we are at the optimum? We've hit other planets. Does not seem to be a life force on those planets anyway similar to ours. Could we not meet people, aliens as you call them in the book, other entities that are less advanced, that are beginning, and we are there to teach them? Why is it always the other way, that we have so much to learn? Are we that ignorant? Are we that naive? That unformed yet?
Well, in terms of the scope of my book, the alien culture is far superior technologically and spiritually. But if you're asking me just for what I think is out there, and are we as the human race more evolved in terms of other life forms that may exist in other places, I think it's a mix. I think it's a mixture. My own thoughts on that subject are simply that I'm sure there are races out there that we would never want to meet if we actually wanted to stay
They
safe
may
in
be
our
saying
homes.
that about us.
Well, I mean, we don't have that much reach. I mean, obviously, on our planet Earth, we do things to each other which are sometimes incredibly unconscionable, and I would prefer not to have that happen here either. But if you're looking for the broader perspective, I think there are people, and in terms of my book, I mean, it's basically alien invasion, but the aliens are the invasion doesn't happen in the way you normally expect things to go, but I mean, they're more advanced, but the people who come are not necessarily they don't provide the people of Earth with things. Given everything that they do provide, they would have preferred that they never showed up in the first place, I'm sure. And so I think that's a really accurate representation. I mean, the amount, the sheer volume of the beings, races, cultures, empires, whatever that exist in this universe. I mean, we are such an infinitesimally small part of that bigger picture. And my own thoughts, simply, if you look around this planet and see, you look at the ancient alien programs on television, right? Certain structures on Earth couldn't be created today by the engineers that exist now. And so I can't see it's a radical leap to say that people with greater engineering skills than we have now put these buildings together, and that they were aliens and came here in spaceships. That doesn't seem to be a big leap that some folks debate about it. It seems to me, well, okay, makes perfect sense. Why they're not here now, why alien races don't exist here now, is a bigger question in my mind. What events occurred away from Earth that caused the aliens to depart is more so. It makes me wonder more. You know what I mean?
Well, I've always thought that was a distinct possibility because, case in point, some of the structures in ancient Egypt.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How the heck did they figure those out? How did they build them? Where were the
I know.
geometric, the
Levers
algebra,
and
everything? How did they figure it out? How did they do it?
well, that's what I'm saying. You know, I mean, all the explanations as to why a low technology group of people could put such structures together is just a way for a modern day engineer to let himself sleep more easily. You know what I mean? It's like it's just silly. As I brought up with my main character, if you can't just see what's in front of you, I mean, say for an engineer, he thinks, well, we're the most evolved, incredibly talented group of engineers this planet has ever seen, and so they see a structure that they couldn't build, and so they think in terms of levers or this or that or whatever things that they think they might have been able to use to do it, and instead of taking the simple leap, well, it was done by somebody else who was a lot smarter than us. You know what I mean? Which seems to be the logical step as far as I'm concerned. And so I have no big back off on assuming that alien races have been here before. And like I said, the bigger question is why they're not here now. That's, to me, more of a question mark than, well, has anyone from outer space ever visited Earth? You know?
So you're saying, why are they not here now?
Yeah.
What happened to
Yeah.
them?
What
Good
caused?
perspective on this.
Yeah.
I'm always wondering how, and you say, why did they go?
Exactly. That's
Maybe they were smarter.
yeah. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of speculation. I finally came to realize that without enough information, you can't make logical steps, right? Mentally, and that certainly has not enough information for me to actually accurately put information. They would say, well, oh, the aliens left because they didn't like the coffee. You know what I mean? They got bored, you know, with Skittles or something. You know what I mean? Who knows, right? It's not enough.
What is your next step in your own quest for immortality?
Well, that you know, obviously to continue to write, and
Is there another book in the offing?
oh, absolutely. I spend time every day either writing it or putting it together mentally, and then it takes you to. I mean, the current book, The Fight for Immortality, forms the basis from which you really leap off. You know, you go away from Earth, but it also takes you to greater ability. What are the limits of a spiritual being's ability to affect his environment, to control things, and control things well, so that everybody can live better as a result of increased abilities. I mean, a lot of, you know, one of the really, really interesting things when you see movies about immortality, there's always a big downside. Every single one. If you become immortal, you crash. There's always a downside. It's so fascinating. I must have seen 10, not that I necessarily remember each one, but I remember that, oh my goodness, this guy lived for this long and there was such a bad consequence to that. It made me wonder, why do people so much have an upset with the idea? Because it's uniform. You see a movie about immortality and something bad happens to the person as a result of it. Or there's just dire consequences. And so there's certain things either about the idea of being able to live forever itself, or, you know, there's some kind of a, I don't know, you know, it's just a strange thing to me. And so I put immortality as, hey, this might be a really good thing. You know what I mean? There could be an upside to this. You know, it might be, somebody gets to the end of their life and they go, gosh, maybe I'd like to try that again and see if I could do better next time. You know what I mean? And just have that kind of an exuberance about living and life, and which is to say that life obviously is not full of challenges and things that are going to cause you pain and upset from time to time, or even significantly. But I'd prefer the idea of picking yourself up by your bootstraps and giving it another shot. That's more my, more of what I expressed in the book, I guess. Yeah.
And a legacy to leave behind for us and all of our readers. I want to thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And say a thank you, of course, to Media Operations Department for the City of Calabasas, for here at the library, Authors Night. And again, what I like to end with when I meet someone like Peter Arthur, that you are today what you will be in 5 years today, with 2 exceptions: the books that you read, the people you meet. And it was a pleasure to meet you, Peter Arthur, and thank you so much for staying with us.